Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Mack Weldon founder and CEO Brian Berger hated shopping for menswear. Surrounded by a mind-numbing assortment of underwear and socks, he questioned how something so essential could be such a pain to buy.
There's just a huge opportunity around loyalty in this category. If you can capture loyalty around these items, you have the potential to do more. We wasn't sure whether that meant more in those categories or more in terms of broadening the offering. And what we found pretty quickly was that customers, the message around fabric innovation and great design and the overall customer experience was really resonating. And that gave us license to do more.
We talk about how he's built his loyal customer base and how the pandemic has actually improved some of his business processes. Brian, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Thanks so much. I'm doing great. Just enjoying a nice day here in New York City.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for joining me. I wish I could be there in person, but hearing your voice and chitting and chatting with you on the podcast is certainly the next best thing. Let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your background and the company you started and what you're building. It looks like you've got a bit of investment banking, lots of media. You got a bit of product in your background, really interesting mix of experiences. So tell us, why don't we start there? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, I have a consumer tech media background. I was an early internet person. I worked for one of the original internet portals called Excite.
I remember them.
Some of your listeners may still have an Excite email address. Businesses that were really focused on producing kind of content and tools for consumers. And the business model was really driven off of, large scale advertising and sponsorship programs. And those businesses are phenomenal, high growth, super interesting to be a part of all of that. But I always was a person who really gravitated towards consumer goods, and brands that really created great customer experiences in the real world in some way. I always knew that in the back of my mind that I was on a path to hopefully doing something more entrepreneurial that really blended what I loved about the internet and technology as a marketing and distribution channel with a physical goods consumer business or something where you would be able to create a better customer experience even if it wasn't around a physical good. So I came to this really purely out of the plight of a frustrated consumer. I hated shopping for underwear and socks. I had this annual pilgrimage that I would do every year to Bloomingdale's where I was I'd have an anxiety attack before I walked in there.
Once a year, whether you need it or not, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, as the story goes, my wife literally threw out everything in my drawer. So I had to go for that one last time. And my aha moment was when the sales guy came over and said, "Are you confused yet?" And so that was really the catalyst for, all right, let me see if there's something here. And I just spent a lot of time really talking to guys and, thinking about how we could do it better. And for me, better was really rooted in two things. One, a better customer experience, just the shopping experience itself. And the second was really around the product. There was no brand in the price point, in that department store price point, that was really, focusing on product in the way that brands like Lululemon and Patagonia and Nike and Under Armour were focusing on product. And to me, it just felt like that was a huge missed opportunity.
And when did you launch Mack Weldon? Give me a sense of the genesis.
Sure. We launched the business in August of 2012. So in many ways, we are, we're a dinosaur in the sort of DTC e-commerce space. And so part of that first wave, on the heels of Bonobos and Warby Parker and some of the other good stories coming out of that sort of time period.
Tell me a bit more about how you go to market. Is it a purely direct to consumer? Is there a blend? How do you think about going to market?
Sure. Yeah, being direct to consumer was always a big part of the brand story and certainly the go-to-market strategy. And why that was important was because there's just a huge opportunity around loyalty in this category. If you can capture loyalty around these items, underwear, socks, T-shirts, undershirts, these kind of wardrobe essentials, then you have the potential to do more. We wasn't sure whether that meant more in those categories or more in terms of broadening the offering. And what we found pretty quickly was that customers, the message around fabric innovation and great design and the overall customer experience was really resonating. And that gave us license to do more. And so, we entered product categories like lounge and other things that, enabled us to kind of capitalize on that loyalty. But it's really rooted in being direct to consumer, because the business model is really, we invest money to get customers into the brand, and then we look forward to hopefully having a long-term relationship with that customer and really being able to have a dialogue with the customer. And when you sell through third parties, it's just hard to do that. It's not that it doesn't have a place in our ecosystem. We early on had long-standing partnerships with places like Equinox and some hotels and some specialty stores where our customers are, and that's important. But the real meat of it is really being able to have that direct dialogue. The other piece is direct retail. We opened our first store at Hudson Yards about a year and a half ago. Right when Hudson Yards opened, we were part of a group of digital first brands that didn't really have retail, and that was going to be part of the unique experience that they were creating at Hudson Yards. And that experience has been tremendously important for us, because you're able to, in a very, very different way, expose customers to the breadth of the brand in a way that you're not able to do online. So we definitely think about that as part of our story, but not as our primary reason for being or our means to really drive growth in our business. It's really meant to be physical retail is really meant to be a complement to the e-com business and obviously a enhancer of the brand.
So as part of this, let's call it a gateway strategy, or I'm calling it a gateway strategy. Does that mean you might expand into skincare and other products for men? Or are you going to go straight down the apparel? And the second part of that question is are you in the replenishment business as well? Is some kind of auto replenishment? Are you thinking about those elements of the business as well?
Yeah, I mean, our whole philosophy around the assortment and merchandising is to keep things as narrowly focused as possible. So we're not ever looking to create a very broad product portfolio. Right. And there's a whole bunch of business model reasons why that is, right? The more bets you make, the harder it is to keep things on the rails, right? Because you have to move through your inventory. So we like keeping things very narrow. That said, there's still a lot of opportunity for us to expand beyond where we are today. And, I think our inclination is generally around apparel and soft goods, as well as maybe some, accessories. We've had some success in it with accessories, bags, essential carry items. And then in terms of the second question was
the replenishment piece. The
replenishment piece, right? So on the replenishment side, we spent a lot of time thinking about, do we enable some type of auto replenishment feature? Up until this point, we've really taken on the responsibility of keeping the customer informed around when and how they should be replenishing. We've taken that on our side just in terms of managing a really good lifecycle CRM operation. We felt that there was a lot of risk to locking people into a subscription, even if there's tons of flexibility. The kind of value curve drops off pretty steeply on most subscriptions after the initial first or second delivery. And so
you really got to be priming that pump again. You really got to be priming that pump again at the third order, because as you say, there's a precipitous drop off, right?
Yeah. And you start from the fact that guys will hold on to their underwear and socks forever. That's where I was. So it's sort of okay, so now you're going to start jamming me up. Right. So it just made us very nervous. And so up until this point, we've done it on our own. I think going forward, now we have enough data to really understand what types of customers are replenishing and at what rate and around what product categories. Undershirts are a really good example. I mean, there is a more measurable replenishment cycle on those types of products because they wear out and it really matters, and guys generally replace them religiously on a regular cycle. So that's a product category where maybe it makes sense to enable some type of auto replenishment that's really kind of customer driven. So that's something that's going to be probably on our roadmap for the coming year. But currently there's nothing in place. We take that on, purely on a CRM basis.
Right on.
But the whole business is predicated on repeat customers, right? So whatever they're buying, whether it's into a new product category or a refresh of what they love, that's how we drive our, ultimately the leverage in our business.
More refresh than replenishment. I like that kind of framework. All right. Well, let's talk. You're not exactly a new startup. You're not an overnight success, so to speak. Let's talk about what you've learned over the past year. The first part of the COVID year or whatever it is, and in terms of 2 starts and 1 stop. And this is kind of advice to the listeners about things you've learned that if they're not doing today, they should start doing, and if they're doing the following thing today, and it could be something you were doing and found not very effective, that they should maybe consider not doing. What are your thoughts on that? 2
things. One, we started being way more diligent and having a lot more kind of hygiene around our meetings. The notion of, kind of people sitting in meetings all day long and not really understanding why in a physical office environment went away very quickly when you started to see Zoom fatigue. It really did call into question, like, who needs to be in what meeting, and what are the kind of, actionable outcomes of the meeting. So it really forced a lot of discipline across the team around, kind of meeting quality, meeting hygiene, and really making sure that we were being really thoughtful around the time we were investing in additional, Zoom time, especially for the team, people who are doing the work.
Now, is there any format or structure you put to it? You read things like at Amazon, they all get in a room and read a pretend product press release and think quietly to themselves at the beginning. Is there any kind of format, or you just kind of carve down and really focus on less meetings, more productivity, more outcome? How did you see that?
It's more the latter, but we are very intrigued by the whole notion of writing up a real clear brief prior to a meeting, circulating it to the attendees of the meeting so that, you're kind of, everyone's sitting down and the pump is primed, so to speak.
Right.
And so step 1 was really just kind of getting things in check. And I think step 2 is really optimizing and taking it to the next level. And so in 2021, I think there's a real opportunity for us to do that now that we've kind of, culled things down a little bit. And the second thing,
that's a great first one.
And the second one is talking to our employee, talking as a team more frequently. We typically do one all hands meeting, sort of a postmortem at the end of every month. And very early on in this, we added another kind of mid-month checkpoint. And the mid-month checkpoint is less kind of business kind of stats and numbers and progress, and more kind of highlighting wins across the team and sharing some kind of personal experiences across the team. It's very important in an environment where where the team is not getting together and having these informal moments that they would typically have in a physical environment, just for people to get a window into what's going on in people's worlds. So we spend about a third of the meeting on, just kind of business updates, and then a third on like kind of wins and really highlighting and really calling people out on, milestones and achievements. And then we spend about a third just like there's a prompt like, what's the best meal that you cooked in quarantine, or where do you wish you could be? Where do you wish you could travel to right now? Or, what was the favorite show that you watch on Netflix? And everybody just goes around and does it. We just bang it out. Like we go literally through the Zoom, the Brady Bunch Zoom boxes, and we just go right across the list. And everyone gets their moment to sort of say it. And it always, maybe there's a minute or two of banter about somebody's particular thing, but it's just a way to like reconnect with everybody, on things that are not entirely work related. And it just gives everyone a voice, in that forum. So that's another start. That's something that I think we would hopefully continue as we go.
So, in one way, you've already given me a stop, too many meetings. But anything else come to mind in terms of things that you should do less of?
Well, I think what we've done, we've learned how to do more with less. We produced our first television advertising campaign without ever stepping foot onto a set or hiring a model or hiring a photographer. We had existing content that we had shot, customer testimonial content that we had shot that was in just a library, a content library that we were using for social and some other things. And our really savvy, really creative marketing and brand team got together and put together a brief. And we worked with a producer that we work with, a freelance producer who cut it all together with some really great voiceover and some graphics. And we used it to launch television advertising, which was a huge opportunity for us in 2020. So we stopped assuming that you need to spend a lot of money to get great marketing, because we didn't spend a lot of money here at all. And we got a really fantastic campaign out of it, and the learnings that will fuel things that we'll do in 2021.
Yeah, fantastic lesson. Now, you're on the virtual stage at CommerceNext. What are you going to be talking about in a minute or two? What's a teaser to what you're going to be talking about at CommerceNext?
I believe I'm talking about how to be effective with podcast advertising, how to connect, how to make the most of podcast advertising. And it's a pretty interesting topic because we were very early in that game.
Right on. Well, listen, I thanks for joining me on this podcast, and I wish you much continued success, and I look forward to seeing you on the virtual stage at CommerceNext coming up soon. So thanks again for joining me.
Michael, thank you so much.
This podcast is part of an ongoing series of CommerceNext episodes that will feature some of the fantastic speakers taking the virtual stage January 20th, 27th, and February 3rd with snapshot insights into how they dealt with online and e-commerce in the first year of the COVID era and lessons learned for the future. You can learn more and register for CommerceNext at CommerceNext.com. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and all the insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so we continue to get amazing guests like Brian onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of ME LeBlanc Company, Inc. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website, meleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe and have a great week.